so much for being here for the panel Coding for a Cause. We are talking to a number of Codesmith alumni. So alums, if you could please introduce yourselves, your name, your cohort, and your current or most recent role in company, and how you ended up at Codesmith. And I will go ahead and just start with Cameron.
Hi, everyone. I am Cameron. I did the New York cohort last year in 2021. And it was fully remote the whole time that I was in it, which is great because I was still living in rural Virginia. Currently, I am a software engineer in DC. I'm a mid-level full stack engineer at Arcadia. It's a renewable energy company that's focused on community solar and enterprise software to increase the adoption of renewable energy by making it cheaper. What else can I tell you guys about? So before Codesmith, I was working freelance as a writer and editor. I was also a barista. I love my espresso. And I decided to change careers because the paycheck was not quite stable enough for me. And I really wanted to feel like I could have a better career trajectory. And this industry is growing. So it gave me that upward path that I wanted.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Justino, could you go next, please?
Yeah. So my full name is Justino Mora. My current previous role, I was the senior software developer at RAICES, which is one of the largest nonprofits in the country. They focus on immigrant rights, advocating for refugees and asylum seekers in the state of Texas. And I was part of the summer 2017 cohort in LA, and I had a lot of fun with my group of friends. And at the moment, I'm just taking a break, enjoying the next couple of months, and we'll be taking it very easy in applying for new jobs.
Good for you. A break is always a nice thing when you've put that much effort and time into something. And then Ronke, please, if you could go next.
Hi, I'm Ronke Oyekunle. I was part of Codesmith's New York cohort, 27 actually. So that was last kind of summer and fall. I'm the co-founder of a company called OMI. We're building a startup in the health and wellness space that essentially helps people know what exactly they should do and what they should buy in order to age better. Health and wellness is a big passion of mine, hence I was very excited to start the company. And what brought me to Codesmith was I started my career more in finance, was an investor at a VC fund, at a venture capital fund for a while, and was working at a digital health startup, and really wanted to build the technical skills that I needed to actually start a company. So very nice to meet you guys, and excited to chat more over the course of the next hour.
Amazing, thank you. And to that point, I am here moderating, but my birthday is on Friday and my family's having a little party for me tonight. So I will be, I have a hard stop at the hour, but if the panelists are able to stay on for a little bit longer, my team will make sure that that happens. So just FYI on that, if you see me go away, that's why. Okay, let's get into some of the questions. So what we're going to do tonight, I have a number of questions that I'm going to pose to the panelists, and then we'll leave some time at the end for you all to ask some questions. So the first one is, can you tell us a little more about your journey into tech? What were your primary goals as you got into software engineering? And Ronke, if you could go first, please.
Sure. So like I mentioned, I started my career in finance. So I was working, but I was working at basically the intersection of finance and tech. So I was an investment banker, which means that I basically worked with tech companies when they wanted to get sold to other tech companies. And then I spent time as an investor, so looking at tech startups and deciding which ones my fund was going to invest in. And then I kind of made the jump to actually working at tech startups, but more in the kind of business and operations and strategy front. So also say that most of my career has actually been in tech, but just not on the engineering side. So really touching everything other than engineering. And I think what I learned during that entire journey is that engineering is really the lifeblood of startups and of the tech industry. And so if I really wanted to kind of continue in this industry, it made so much sense to really have that foundation in it. And so as I started thinking about, taking the path of actually starting a company, I felt like having technical skills, whether or not I choose to be, long-term be an engineer or not, was just so critical and so important. So that's what brought me to doing the Codesmith Bootcamp last year.
Awesome, thank you. Cameron, would you go next?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, honestly, the stability of the paycheck was my primary motivation, but also I had taken computer science classes before, and so I knew it was something that I had, a bit of skill for, and that made the scary jump that much easier, just having tried it before. I think for anyone that hasn't taken classes in computer science before, definitely give the CSX platform a go. Attend some of the weekly boot camps, and that'll help you decide if this is, a good journey for you to make as well.
Awesome. Justino, could you go next?
In my case, I studied political science and computer science, both in community college and also at UCLA. So I already had the computer science background. And for me, it was a matter of my main motivation was using digital and tech tools as a way to advocate for human rights, specifically immigrant rights. And I began doing this in 2009, just by getting involved with local pro-immigration immigrant rights organizations here in LA and also at the national level. And the more I saw just in general the social justice movement across the US, it began to became very clear that when it comes to social movements in general, they're behind in adopting new technology. So I saw a great opportunity to get involved in the immigrant rights sector and use my skills to build platforms to help nonprofit organizations across the US and here in LA to build their own technological infrastructure. So that was my entry into this field.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so you've all graduated from Codesmith's immersive program in the last couple of years. What did the job search look like for you post-graduation? I'd love to know more about your personal experiences, how you went about searching, navigating the interview process, determining company fit, those kinds of things. And just, if you could go first on that, we'll unmute you again.
Yeah. For me, I was actually running my own nonprofit at the time when I did the immersive program in the summer of 2017, and we were having a lot of success. We had over 700,000 followers across all social media platforms, and I was trying to become, I guess, a better software engineer to apply that for my nonprofit because we were growing very rapidly, and I had dreams of creating my own type of platforms to help immigrants and people in general. So as soon as I graduated, I continued with my nonprofit. But once I stopped my work with the nonprofit, that's when I began looking for software engineering positions. And I was applying to Microsoft, Google. I made it to the last interview with Google. And the day before my interview at the Google headquarters, I got a call from RAICES, and they were like, "Hey, we want to offer you the senior software engineer position." And I just went with them, mostly because of company fit. RAICES is a immigrant rights organization, again, based in Texas. And what I wanted to do was continue in that path. And while, of course, Google would have paid more, for me, it was a matter of also using my skills and experience to help further and create those tools that were really necessary for RAICES. And actually, prior to joining RAICES, I ended up co-founding a fellowship, the Civic Media Fellowship at the USC Annenberg Innovation Lab, where I'm currently a senior fellow. And that fellowship is funded by the MacArthur Foundation, and they help identify technologists, digital strategists, creatives who are in this field. But yeah, that's how things looked for me professionally after graduating from Codesmith.
Amazing. What an awesome story. Cameron, can we hear about yours?
Yeah, my job search process involved a lot of spreadsheets. Codesmith gives you a template during the career, the hiring portion of the program. And I took that template and souped it up times 10. spreadsheet queen over here. That definitely helped me stay organized. I would take notes on what I liked about a company, whether I had done my thank you note yet, who I knew at the company that I could talk to for information or referral. But on the intangible side, the other aspect of my job search experience was just the human element that I found. It was 2021 and a lot of companies were bouncing back from hiring freezes and financial downturns. So at every turn, I encountered a lot of optimism and opportunity and just excitement from people. And I made an effort to mirror that back, to enter every interview with gratitude and curiosity. And that helped me keep a less nervous mindset, a more positive mindset, because even if I wasn't going to get an offer out of that interview, I was still making really interesting connections and having really interesting conversations that helped me learn about niches in the industry I wasn't aware of before and helped me narrow in on what kind of job I might be interested in. So I met really cool security engineers, really cool DevOps engineers, really cool application development engineers, and was able to see myself into their shoes, decide I wanted to be an application developer. And my job search got more and more focused as it went on. And eventually I learned to prioritize finding a team where I would feel comfortable enough to be productive over a long period of time, a team where I could plant my roots and bloom, where I would receive a lot of mentorship. And that came about through just trying to stay really focused on that interpersonal element while I was interviewing.
I love what you said about your mindset about the interview process. As somebody who used to work for an MBA career management center, like I have seen a lot of stressed out MBAs, being one myself as well. But I love how you went about it, recognizing that the interview process can be actually very interesting and like it's a mindset shift. That's all I'm really trying to get at. I love how you went about that.
Yeah, focus on the conversation. Absolutely.
Right, exactly. It's a conversation, right? Absolutely. All right. So Justino, you were talking about how you were kind of down the path with a number of very large, big name tech companies, and you made a different shift. What went into your decision to work for a mission-driven organization? I know that you have some specifics, so this question is actually for the entire panel, but did you set out to do that, or that was like kind of a, maybe this will happen kind of a thought, or how did you all think about that? And Justino, if you could start, just because I've already singled you out.
Yeah, for me, it was more straightforward. Immigration is something that I'm really passionate about. It's something that directly affects me and close members in my family. And also because I had spent over a decade in this space, I saw it as my moral responsibility to be in that space as a way to also transfer my own knowledge and experience onto another group of people. Since I was managing 3 other software engineers, a small team of software engineers, and I saw it as a imperative for me to just like transfer on that knowledge. So for me, it was mostly because of that.
Got it. And Ronke, you have actually started a mission-driven company. Did you set out to do that when you came into Codesmith?
Yeah, it was something that I'd been thinking about prior to coming into Codesmith. I think there were a couple of paths I was thinking about post Codesmith. I certainly was thinking about actually getting more engineering, like just hands-on experience at a company of some kind. And I was thinking about starting my own company. For me, it's just that again, health and wellness is just like a passion. I've personally had a lot of terrible experiences with the healthcare system in this country, and I feel like it's not at all optimized to actually like helping people a lot of times. So as my co-founder and I just continued to talk about ideas, what got us excited about the company we started, OMI, is just this idea of actually giving people personalized advice for what they actually need. And that just felt, building something in that space just felt a little bit more exciting than spending, another year or two at, a B2B SaaS company, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I think I'm farther enough in my career now to know that like it actually does matter what I wake up every day to do at work. And it makes it a lot more interesting when you're actually passionate about what you're doing.
Fully agree. And Cameron, how about for you?
Yeah, so it wasn't my first priority to work at a mission-driven company. I was mainly thinking about myself and what I would need to succeed and grow my skills. So I was prioritizing mentorship and a supportive environment. But it just so happened that that aligned with a mission-driven company, because in that kind of company, when it's a healthy company and it's, achieving the goals that they've set out to achieve, they also care about the quality of life that their employees have. And so that kind of corresponded for me. And the other way that I ended up in a mission-driven company was I was reading rankings of like the best places to work in the city, the most highly rated employee satisfaction in that city, excuse me. And the list in DC had Arcadia as #1 highest employee satisfaction. It was like listed as the greatest place to work in like 2019 or something. I was really excited about that naturally. So that's how I decided to apply here, and it worked out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So for those of you who have had, right, Jason? Yes, right, exactly. So for those of you who have worked at other types of companies beforehand that maybe weren't focused on mission or not mission driven, what have you found to be the biggest change into moving into that kind of space? And you've touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more. Ronke, could you start us off?
Sure. So, well, I started my career in investment banking. So the opposite of the mission driven, unless the mission is making as much money as possible. It's yeah, like I completely echo what Cameron says. Like I also worked at a digital health startup, and I'll say that generally speaking, when the company's mission is to in some way improve like people's lives or the world, the types of people who are attracted to those companies tend to be people who also care about people. So I think you're just much more likely to have like a much friendlier work environment. And then I think just above that, it's really just about the day-to-day of like coming into the office, what you're working on. Like the fact is, like any job is going to get annoying at some point. But it becomes a lot easier when you actually care about the product that you're building and you actually care about the users that you're serving. And I just find that that's way easier at mission-driven startups and mission-driven companies as compared to, a regular company where you're building a product that you don't really like care that much about and you don't really see it like actually impacting anyone.
I totally feel you on that. I love that perspective. As somebody, and I'm not on the panel, I'm the moderator, but as somebody who has worked at some very large companies, I have been at Codesmith for about a year, and it's night and day, right? The excitement that I have to come to work every day, and this is, whatever. But it's such a difference that I have between this and like the Home Depot, for example, which is another company that I worked for. Okay, Cameron, how about for you?
Honestly, Ronke nailed it. I don't have anything to add to what she said. She just like read my mind and took the words right out of my mouth. So just retweet.
Hey, should I move on to the next question, or you got something to say?
No, I say move on to the next question.
Okay,
Retweet.
perfect. Got it. No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm good. I can edit. Or I can just. All right. I'd love to know what y'all are building. So are there any particular initiatives or work that you're involved with that are really helping push society forward, or, individuals forward, or just, can you talk to me about what you're building? So Cameron, I am going to start with you. You are like effusively nodding, so I'm going to go with you.
Oh, I'm just really excited about my answer to this question. So at work, for the past like month and a half-ish, I've been knees deep, honestly elbows deep, in a project to automate some tasks that my coworkers in the operations department have to do on a quarterly basis to stay in regulatory compliance. And for them, it's been like a lot of manual labor, and the record keeping is kind of disparate. So I've been working on just improving their quality of life and making their job easier, which I'm really passionate about, so we can run a little bit faster and go a little further. And then outside of work, I'm also doing stuff I'm really excited about by volunteering for Code for DC. Code for America is this like overall organization, and they have chapters in most major cities where you can volunteer in different projects you're passionate about. So I get to volunteer for a case management software for emergency reproductive care. And we're just all donating our time to build this software that's very, very helpful to an organization that doesn't have a whole lot of budget to spare. And that software is built in Ruby on Rails, which is a coding language I have learned since getting my new job. And it was really hard to learn. So volunteering outside of work has been able to help me improve my skills in this new language. And it's just like reinforcing what I'm doing at work in my off hours. And it's been a really great way to learn. And honestly, you can start at any skill level volunteering for Code for America. So that would be something to look into for you all.
Awesome. Do you feel like, just as a follow-up, do you feel like Codesmith helped you, and because we do JavaScript, do you feel like Codesmith's kind of ideology, pedagogy, do you feel like it helped you be able to take on the task of learning Ruby on Rails?
100%. I think the biggest takeaway that I got in terms of like what I learned about the learning process at Codesmith was it helped me prove to myself that anything is learnable. And so then when I had to like get assigned this new coding language at work, at first I was really super intimidated, but I just remembered, okay, at Codesmith, I overcame this huge hurdle learning JavaScript and React and GraphQL and other difficult things. I can do it again because I've already done it twice, 3 times before. And even though it was really hard, Codesmith had shown me that like what I can't figure out today, I'll probably figure out tomorrow with the support of my team. And yeah, that sped me along for sure.
That's awesome. I really like that. Okay. Justino, how about for you?
Yeah, so I guess I can share 2 things. One project that I was working on at work at my previous job. I was leading the development of a case and client management system. The first one I would say of its kind within the nonprofit immigrant rights sector, where we were planning on centralizing all client and case information. The tech stack, essentially the same type of tech stack that we use at Codesmith, a Node on the back end, MySQL, Express, front end, Angular. I didn't learn Angular at Codesmith, I think. Oh, I think I did one day. But full time at my job, it was an Angular front end application. And that was like a really powerful tool, mostly because of the fact that it has a potential. It definitely has a potential of helping attorneys and legal assistants with their day-to-day work, and also automating many processes that at the moment can take, from a couple of hours to maybe several days or even weeks in gathering data from the government in related to people's immigration processes. The second thing that I want to share is that I'm also at the current moment, I got an email today that I can share it publicly, a scholar with the Aspen Institute Policy Hub. And one of the projects that I was working on in the last couple of months involves creating a recommendations for a large governmental agency in the US. And we're going to be presenting to this US government agency. I can't say their name because it involves a lot of litigation. And we're going to be presenting that project to them on Friday. And if they do accept our recommendation, they're going to be implementing it and potentially affecting very large cases in the United States.
Wow, awesome. And thank you all for, the work from home situation is real. So my son and his cousin just got back with the babysitter from jujitsu. So I had to give him a little kiss before go to grandma's house. But Ronke, if you could please share with us what you're building right now. I know that obviously it's within your company, but let us know what you're building.
Well, by the way, congratulations, Justino. That sounds amazing. So my company, like the one-liners, that we basically combine data and human experts to tell people what they should be doing and buying in order to age better. And so for us, that spans a lot of things. So the first area we're focusing on is skincare. So what we're doing right now is building a way for basically us to intake all of this information about you and all of these images of your skin, as well as the products that you're currently using and any skincare problems and goals that you have. And basically outputting with the help of our kind of like doctor, essentially like, these are the products that work well for you, these are the products that don't, and here are some actual product recommendations for you. So it's basically a pretty like large scale recommendation engine for all of the hundreds and thousands of skincare brands and products that exist today. So a lot of the work is actually just breaking the entire process down into much smaller steps. For now, we're mostly focusing on just like the analysis of products. So basically being able to look at your skin problems and the ingredients in certain products and seeing what works best for you. And then over time, building out more of the recommendations engine, and also being able to take feedback from users over time and getting more specific, like if you like a light moisturizer versus a heavy moisturizer, using that to feed into the recommendations that we provide to you. So a lot of the work is actually, it's really cool. It's a lot of it is basically manual work, and then starting to figure out what we can automate over the next few weeks, and building out like just very like dirty and scrappy tools for that. And then at the same time, working with kind of our data science advisors and some of the machine learning engineers that we've started to work with to figure out how we can structure the company in the right way so that over time, when we have enough data, we can actually build like more sophisticated machine learning models. So it's really cool. It's really interesting. I love what I do. Like we're starting with this kind of big problem in skincare, but our goal is to basically do this for a lot of other healthcare verticals. So think like nutrition, like actually getting very specific with what works specifically for a person, or even areas that are probably even more complex around sleep, around fertility, around hormonal health and more.
That is so amazing. As you're talking about it, I'm like, I want to get back on the phone with you just so that we can do, you're not asking me to brainstorm with you, but I want to, just because it's so fun for me to like think about all your business, the ways that your business can come to life. So whenever you want to, you just text me. Okay. All right, let's do it. All right, y'all. So we are at half an hour. I want to at least ask a couple more questions of y'all before we open it up to the floor. So quickly, what does your day-to-day life look like now? Is there anything in particular? Well, we've talked about what you have been building and working on, but what does your day-to-day look like now? Like, is it really stressful? Are you working 8 to 7? Are you like a little bit more calm? Do you work from home? Do you work from the office? How does it look? Ronke, can you start? I'm very curious about yours.
Yeah, so I mean, my day has shifted a lot. Earlier this year, I was actually doing more coding. So I was probably spending about like 50% of my day coding, like kind of the various MVPs that we had going at that time, and the remaining in just like kind of like strategy sessions and recruiting. I'd say nowadays, I spend probably about 20 to 30% of my time recruiting. We're looking to hire our, thanks for that drink, yes, MVP. We're looking to hire our like kind of founding engineer. So I spend about 20 to 30% of my time both recruiting and interviewing folks for that role. The other kind of time is split probably about another 30% on just iterating through our product, talking to users, another 30% on like working with our advisors, and starting to think about fundraising as well and just strategy. And then maybe like the remaining, I guess, what's that, like about 10 to 20% of time is spent on strategy, marketing, and whatever miscellaneous things that we need to do to keep the company running. So it's pretty varied, kind of like day to day. And then, yeah, my working situation. So I'm currently actually working out of a friend's place in San Francisco. But typically my co-founder and I, who are both based in New York, we're working in either my apartment or her apartment. And like, as we like kind of like bring on like interns and eventually employees over the next couple of months, we'll be working out of an office in New York.
Awesome, nice. How about for you, Cameron?
Yeah, so my company is hybrid. We have a couple of offices in a couple of cities, and you can choose whether you want to work remotely or work from the office. I prefer to work a little bit of both. So I go into the office 3 days a week, and I work in my pajamas Mondays and Fridays. It's a great little sandwich situation. I spend a little less than a quarter of my time each day in meetings. I do a lot of pair programming. I do planning sessions with my product manager. I'll sometimes do research or investigations into new features that we're planning, and then I'll give presentations back to my team about what I've discovered, and we'll collaborate together to make a plan. So about 25% of my day is highly collaborative. There's a lot of cross-functional interaction. I have to be able to explain my code, my technical work to non-technical partners in a way that gives them enough information that they can make informed decisions about what we need to do, which is honestly a big challenge that I underestimated before starting to work as an engineer. It's just sharing knowledge with non-technical partners. I also work with designers too from time to time every day. And then the other 75% of my time is a lot of like solo coding and debugging. We write a lot of tests at Arcadia, so I spend a lot of time getting my test coverage perfect. And then I'll also code review my peers' code, which again is collaborative, empathetic, it really tests those interpersonal skills. So my day-to-day is firing on all 4 cylinders. It's not just technical. It draws together a lot of different capacities that I've had to build both during Codesmith and after. And it's really satisfying to be able to draw together these different streams of my personality, these different streams of my professional background every day.
That's just great. I love to hear that because, we talk about it all the time at Codesmith with the, the empathy and the being able to communicate technically, but also non-technically. Like you have to be able to have all of those things. And I love to hear that. I mean, I already know it to be true, but it's great to hear from alumni that say, this is real. Like this is an important part of what I'm being taught, what I was taught at Codesmith. That's awesome to hear. Justino, how about for you?
Yeah, I definitely want to echo a lot of the things that Ronke and Cameron just mentioned right now. I guess I'll explain what my day-to-day looked like when I was a senior software developer at RAICES. And a lot of things that Cameron mentioned, I could relate, essentially having pair programming sessions. I would say that between 60 to 70% of my time was dedicated to coding, either doing solo coding or pair programming. I was also responsible many times of facilitating our sprint planning sessions. For those that are not familiar with what a sprint is typically a period of time dedicated to working on new features for the software and getting those done and getting them through the review and testing process. And our sprints were 2 weeks long. Also conducting code reviews, reviewing code, creating new features, meeting with people from across the organization to determine their needs and write those down, and then create new stories for approval, and then also meeting with the CTO, doing backlog grooming are essentially sessions when you essentially sit down with the product manager or the CTO or any other stakeholders and kind of like define what features need to be prioritized. And that's where you get to flesh out the business requirements for each feature. And essentially I was in all those meetings doing a little bit of many different things. And I also want to emphasize again the importance of communication, knowing how to communicate and connect with your colleagues is extremely important. Of course, having those technical skills is very important, but communication goes a long way.
I'll just put a little plug in for Codesmith's pair programming that we do on a weekly basis, just FYI. All right, as we finish this up, at least the structured portion, do you have, panel, please, do you have any words of advice that you'd like to share with anyone who's thinking about moving into the tech industry, or maybe maybe words of advice as they think about or consider a mission-driven company? So Cameron, could you start us off?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is I think back on where I was summer of 2020 as I was trying to decide, do I keep trying to make my career in the arts work, or do I switch to a career in STEM? I knew that I was really interested in STEM, that I had done well in science classes all throughout school, but I felt intimidated by the field in general because I had this idea in my head of what it took to be good at software engineering. And honestly, that idea to me looked very masculine. It looked very like stereotypical white Yale man. I don't know, I had just consumed too much TV about Silicon Valley, I think. And I think a takeaway I got from feeling that way that I'd like to share with others is that my feeling was wrong and my perception was wrong. The industry is more diverse than I had realized going in. And in any industry, you can find a pocket where you're going to feel comfortable, you're going to feel accepted and empowered. And you just have to prioritize that during your job search. And I will say that Codesmith helped me improve my confidence as a woman in STEM, which I really needed at that time. And then the other thing that comes to mind, I'm preaching to the choir here, but this was advice that I received, and it was really helpful as I decided both which boot camp to attend and which jobs to apply to. And it was to prioritize not the paycheck, but the environment. Prioritize an environment where you're going to feel empowered, where you can feel motivated, where you can feel productive, working 40 hours a week. All of those feelings, like the healthfulness that you feel at work, will have a bigger impact on both your personal growth and your quality of life over the rest of your career than any dollar amount. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Ronke, how about for you? Any advice to offer?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cameron had a lot of good points. Yeah, I think the only thing to just like add and to echo is like, it's always worth it to take the plunge. Like I think if it's something that you're interested in, life is short and this is a fantastic industry with just so much diversity. I feel like when people say tech, it really can encompass everything from working at like an energy company, working human rights. Like it's like literally just this panel is like we all work in tech in some way, but it's in such a diversity of like just different spaces. So yeah, I think it's always worth it. And in terms of what like finding a mission-driven company or what to look for, I think it's really helpful to just look internally and see like things that you're passionate about. And funny enough, there's most likely a company that's building in that space. I think that's a very easy way to find a place that's both meaningful for you, but also, you know, does provide like, you know, a good job that you can actually like build a career in. So that'd be my only advice.
I love it. Thank you. And Justino, anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely want to encourage people to continue to be creative. Don't be afraid to fail. Like even on your day-to-day job, you know, I can tell you how many times I had to go to Stack Overflow, or how many times, you know, I took down our staging or release environment. I once took our production environment down. It was a silly mistake. I mean, so this happens, you know, every day, and you know that's one thing that I like to tell people is don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try new technologies. I think imposter syndrome is, you know, very real, and I've seen it, you know, again with you know, disproportionately disadvantaged people in the tech sector: women, Black, Latinx, brown engineers, and I think that's very common. And I think it's fine to feel that way. And one of the things that I definitely want to encourage people to do is once you get those jobs, or even before you get that job, find a very strong support network of like-minded individuals who will support you, who will champion you, who will send you those job listings, and who will be willing to write, you know, recommendations for you. That's one of the things that I like to do with the engineers that I know. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I did with my cohort in Codesmith 2017. We went ahead and endorsed each other on those skills on our LinkedIn profiles. And that's one of the things that I still continue to do to today. I go ahead and write recommendations for my previous colleagues. And, you know, I guess I want to make an open invitation for any Black, brown women in this panel who would like to reach out for any advice. Feel free to reach out to me and message me on LinkedIn.
That's so kind. Thank you for that wonderful offer. All right, I am at the end of my questions. Does anybody in the audience have questions? We have, for those who don't know, if you go to reactions, and on the bottom of your screen, there's a place where you can raise your hand. If you would please use that functionality, and then we will get going. Mike knows how to do it, so we're going to start with him.
Hi there. Thank you for, you know, I really love seeing just all the facets of like the Codesmith community. And this is the first time I've seen like an alumni event, so I was actually pretty excited to join this. I had a one thing that I'm interested in seeing, and I took a quick search at seeing who else is attending, and it's very interesting to me that we have a lot of people who are historically underrepresented. What I'm curious is, and this is, I guess, in part directed to Ronke, but I think a lot of us are going through it when we're looking to get into Codesmith and then our time afterwards. It seems like she had, both a big company but also had an entrepreneurial bent, where she may have had, essentially like business management expertise, but then she made a decision to get coding and get into the weeds in terms of technical expertise so that she could be a different kind of entrepreneur. And I think a lot of us have these kind of entrepreneurship ideas for ourselves as, frankly, underrepresented people. And I was just wondering how she, if she could speak a little bit about her decision-making process to go that route, to upskill in that way.
Awesome. So Ronke, I'll turn it over to you, and just know, folks, you can direct questions directly to them. Don't direct it to me, because again, I'm hopping off in 6 minutes. No, wait, yeah, 6 minutes. Bye.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for the question. Yeah, so yes, it's definitely it's one. I think there are a couple of things to pull out from that question. First, it definitely is harder when you're underrepresented to actually start any type of startup, especially a startup like ours, where we're planning on raising from, where we have raised from VCs and plan on continuing to raise from VCs. That said, part of the reason that the path was at least a little bit easier for me personally was because I had worked as an investor at a VC fund. So I kind of had an understanding of like the space prior to going into it, and what like the expectations would be. And like, frankly speaking, and probably most importantly, had a network of people that I could tap into in order to start it. So that's like, I mean, honestly, that's not very helpful since most people don't have the background, but that was just like personally for me. And then I think your second piece around, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, how do you go about like doing it? What, like, how do you think about that? For me personally, it was, I had spent time in VC watching a lot of founders. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from that was that, frankly speaking, it's not like the founders I met were the smartest people that I'd ever met in the industry. They were certainly not like, oh my God, like everyone is, a brilliant person. It's more that they were relatively intelligent and they were willing to take the leap. That was really, really what set people apart. And so for me, I think just like having that opportunity to spend a chunk of my career watching founders and things like that, it started to give me a little bit more of the confidence that like I would be able to do it once I found something I was passionate enough to start a company in. So yeah, I think if entrepreneurship is something that you're interested in, one, it's definitely always helpful to have like a solid skill set going into it. A technical skill set, honestly speaking, is kind of the best one to have, especially if you're looking to build a tech startup, just because their technical talent is limited and it's what you kind of need for anything tech related. So I think it's always great to have that. Personally, having like more of a business background, it's not that you need to be an engineer. I just find that like I now can have deep technical conversations with folks. And even though I won't be the engineer building like the rest of my company, I have a full understanding of what people are doing. And when we make technical architecture decisions, I can be involved in those discussions, and I wouldn't have been able to do that prior to Codesmith. So that was more of the thing to me. And so like, yeah, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, definitely having a technical skill set is important. And then I think beyond that, like just like starting to work in environments where you are in startups. So you get to see how like actual startups are built. Starting to like think about ideas that like get you excited. Because it's hard and most startups fail. So at the minimum, it has to be a space that you're willing to work out, and it might take like a couple of years before you really get the company going. And then I think the last piece of it is just, yeah, like just starting to talk to and meet people who have started companies. I think you'll find that hearing people's stories helps to make that whatever imposter syndrome that I think we all have around starting something like start to fade away over time.
Wonderful.
Wow,
Great question. Thank you, Mike. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Any more questions out there? Don't be shy. Kate.
Hi, everyone. First off, thank you all for sharing your experiences tonight. Really great panel. And I guess I was wondering, since most of you or all of you are career shifters to some extent, do you find that there were skills that you developed in your past careers that helped you as software engineers?
Y'all can feel free to unmute and answer as you feel ready.
I have one example. So in my past life, I mean, this is not really past because I still write. But in my past life, when I was writing more frequently and doing it for a job, feedback was a really prevalent part of my everyday. Getting critiques from fellow writers, getting critique from editors, having to hand off a story and have an editor completely change the way that I'd phrase things before it went into print. And that was really hard at first, but as I got used to it, my ego started to drop more and more. And I became much more open to feedback and more open to the way that a finished product can be a collaborative effort. And that has 100% transferred to software engineering, because at least, in most environments, no new piece of code can enter production until it's been reviewed by someone, until it's been approved by someone, until it's been edited by someone else. So there's still that same situation of having to let go of your ego, accept feedback and know it's not personal, and being willing to make changes in order to achieve the common goal together.
In my case, I definitely want to emphasize what Cameron mentioned, the collaborative piece. Given the fact that a lot of my background is also a lot of political organizing, community organizing, I feel that a lot of those skills when it comes to working with other people, brainstorming together, and getting critical feedback was super important. And those are very transferable over to the software engineering. What's the other one? Communication, like knowing how to communicate and communicate your ideas and explain very abstract concepts in language that people will be able to understand. I think that's another very useful, valuable skill that you can have. If you can do that and explain it to a 15-year-old, 10-year-old, explain a very difficult concept to a kid, then that's a really powerful skill to have. And then I feel that that's something that has allowed me to thrive in this sector, just like taking very abstract concepts and explaining it to many different individuals. And it just takes practice. If you don't have that skill, that's something that you can easily, quickly develop. Just try to explain it to, if you have nieces, nephews, little sisters, little brothers, go ahead and explain it to them until they get it. And I think that's one great to develop that skill.
That's great. As the second of four, absolutely, you got to utilize those younger siblings. Well, are there any other questions out there in the world? No, feeling good. Don't be shy.
I can ask a question. I have one
Please.
that might be a good wrap-up question too.
Okay.
For those in the room, do you have any resources, whether that be like websites, forums, blogs, to learn about new cool companies that are in the mission-driven space? Sometimes I feel like it's hard to figure out which ones are there and where to look to find those resources. So I was wondering if you guys had any.
It's a good question. I would say one kind of easy way to do this is literally just kind of following the top VC funds and what they're investing in. So if there are specific areas that you're interested in, like energy, for example, or climate or health, they're usually VC funds that that are in that space and kind of fund some of the best companies in that space. That's a really good way to like filter. Like for example, there's a fund called Lux that does a lot of kind of really interesting, like very scientific, very kind of like either biotech or longevity related companies. So they're a really interesting one if you're interested in kind of companies in that space. There are other funds that again focus on like climate tech and focus on other stuff. So I think just finding those places is a good way to filter, and it also gives you somewhat of a quality filter as well.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I know I said I have to go, but you don't have to go. If you have any additional questions, please let them put them out into the world. But otherwise, we can wrap up a little bit early in last moment of mission driven, but also Codesmith driven. Getting in, how'd they do it? Like any of those kind of questions that you might be considering. I know our panel is happy to answer as well. You've got the alumni here. So if there's anything that you want to know about Codesmith, because I know that people want to hear from alumni, now's a great time to do that as well. Jamie, go for it.
Hi, sorry I don't have my video on right now. I was curious about how, I mean, I know Ronke, you said you create your own business, so it might not go to you, but going into like a business or going into the field for after coming out of a boot camp versus going to like get a degree, if you found anything that might have been unique to that, or if you found any hardships with that, or if everything was like clear going. I know they give a lot of help at Codesmith, but I was curious about your guys' perspective on that.
That's an interesting question, and I would be really curious to hear what my fellow panelists have to say. My 2 cents is I don't think you need a college degree to do coding. I'm curious if you two agree. Don't get me wrong, like having taken a couple of computer science classes before helped me get a faster start and gave me like a theoretical foundation that was super useful. But college classes are focused on, academic knowledge on principles, and boot camps are focused on application, like to real world job requirements. So I found that super useful, more so than taking classes. What do you guys think?
I also agree that having like a formal education is not really necessary. I do want to emphasize that having understanding of data structures and algorithms is very important. So definitely take some time to learn that, and that's something that you can learn outside of school, outside of the university. There's like great courses online that you can take. In fact, I'm glad I have it here with me right now, since I'm getting ready for some technical interviews. Can't see it, but it's called Cracking the Coding Interview. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. I highly recommend that book. You'll learn a lot of those data structures and algorithms that are very important. And then just to kind of like emphasize the fact that you don't need like a formal, I guess, education background in computer science. One of the software engineers that I was supervising at RAICES, she ended up leaving the organization last year. In less than 2 years, she became a really amazing, incredible front-end engineer. And she became within those 2 years, a senior software front-end engineer at another company, just because she put in the time and the effort to learn and practice, and she was not afraid to fail. So that's one of the things that I want to emphasize. Don't be afraid, to fail. Find a support network outside and also within whatever job you ended up getting, because having people that will support you, that will provide the resources, and that will mentor you is very important in your professional development and in moving up that I guess ladder of promotions.
And I'll just add, just as someone who's doing more of the recruiting of engineers now, at least like I would say almost half of the engineers that I speak to are actually bootcamp grads. So it's definitely like you do not need to go to undergrad in order to build a career in this industry. A lot of the folks I'm talking to, you know, either they graduated like maybe like a couple of years out of a bootcamp, and their career trajectory looks very similar to the folks that we are looking at who did comp sci degrees.
Wow, thank you all for sharing, and thank you all again for joining us this evening. We are a few minutes over time, but really glad that everyone was able to join, ask for questions, hear from our lovely panelists. Justino, Cameron, and Ronke, thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a great evening.